One of the most important works of 20th century philosophy, Philosophical Investigations by Ludwig Wittgenstein, opens up with this particular quote by St. Augustine. When grown-ups named some object and at the same time turned towards it, I perceived this and I grasped that the thing was signified by the sound they uttered, since they meant to point it out. This, however, I gathered from their gestures, the natural language of all people, the language that by means of facial expression and the play of eyes, of the movements of the limbs and the tone of voice, indicates the affections of the soul when it desires or clings to or rejects or recoils from something. In this way, little by little, I learned to understand what things the words which I heard uttered in the respective places in various sentences signified. And once I got my tongue around these signs, I used them to express my wishes. So, what's described here is the process of learning language as associating names with objects. If my parents would point to an apple and utter the word apple, I would gradually make out that apple means apple. And then they would point to an orange and say orange. And then they would point to me and say disappointment. This language learning would become a sort of game where they would point to different examples of apple, and I would gradually, according to Augustine, grasp the essence, the thing that all the instances of apple share and defines them as being an apple. So what's important here is the idea that words are just names that refer to individual objects. But this idea immediately runs into a problem. The problem was pointed out in a charming dialogue between Adeodatus, the son of Augustine, and Augustine himself, where they just, talk about language and stuff, and they try to dissect a line from Virgil's Aeneid.
Si nihil extanta superis placet urbe relinqui.
Which roughly translates to, if it pleases the gods that nothing be left of so great a city. Gods refer to gods, city refers to city. Okay, so what does if refer to? Lacking an external referent, Adeodatus suggests that if refers to doubt in speaker's mind. So Augustine agrees, and he urges his son to go to the next word, which is nihil, nothing. So what does nothing refer to? So yeah, Adeodatus has to say that nothing refers to what is not. But then Augustine says, you can't refer to something that is not, because if it's not, then there's nothing to refer to. So if you refer to something that is not, then you're referring to nothing, so that word is meaningless. And then they're both stumped, and they just move on. And they never return to this. That's how we do philosophy. If a theory works, it works. If it doesn't, you can ignore it. So even though this sentence is like a explosion of counterexamples, they never surrender the principle that our words are just names that refer to objects, and all words have to refer to something. Only in the Middle Ages do logicians distinguish between content words like God, person, apple, and function words, which just don't have a meaning on their own, but they contribute to the sentence as a whole having meaning. And, if, not, none, either, every, the things that today we know as logical constants. Logical constants, right? The things that, help establish a connection or a relation between two meaningful sentences or signs or, whatever, depends on the logics you do, I guess. The banana is cold, or the banana is hot. If the banana is cold, then the banana is not hot. The banana is hot, and I'm a disappointment. Such a distinction, however, does not really get rid of the problem. Imagine me saying God does not exist. So now you have to ask me, if God does not exist, what am I referring to when I use the word God? Am I saying first God, this thing, has the property of not existing, but what? If it doesn't exist, how can it have a property? What? You see, if I want to say that God doesn't exist, God has to exist. Checkmate, atheists. Then we have sentences like unicorns don't exist, and again, like, who are you referring to if they don't exist? You know, therefore they have to exist. You know, we're getting into some wacky metaphysics right now. You know, Austrian philosopher Alexius Meinung, he's he had a very bizarre solution to this problem. You know, like maybe unicorns don't exist, but we're still referring to them. So they don't really, strictly speaking, exist, but they have to be out there if we want, you know, to make, you know, speak of them. So even though they're not like existing, they're still like being, subsisting, you know, some other word. And the same applies for the invisible spaghetti monster and like the, you know, square circles. They are out there, you know, somewhere, and our words, they refer to them, even though they don't really, strictly speaking, exist, but something else, you know, their existence is different, I don't know. Yeah, and according to this philosophy, the universe is just, you know, packed with things, you know, like a jungle, mindless jungle. You know, and that's just philosophy, you know, you can't solve a problem, then you just start doing metaphysics. But it doesn't have to be that way, and in the next episodes we will look at Frege and Russell and Wittgenstein, Carnap and so on. They all had solutions that were a bit more, you know, okay. Hey, so I'm just trying some things out with the YouTube channel, so if you have any thoughts to share, any comments, I don't know, you can let me know in the comments, I guess. You know, just a thought.